Good evening. Thank you for joining us for our special election coverage. I'm Andy Madison. We begin our team coverage of election 2016 with the race for the Worcester 16th district between incumbent Dan Donahue and challenger John Frisella. We can report Dan Donahue wins re-election, defeating Frisella a 2-1 margin. Donahue has served in the 16th district since 2013. Our Olivia Lemon is standing by with the winner. Olivia?
We are outside of State Representative Dan Donahue's election party, where the state rep has won by a large margin. He heads back to the State House to serve his second full term in office.
This election season was all about us running on our record and making sure that we're going out telling the story, what we've been able to deliver for the district, the accomplishments we've been able to achieve, and for people to continue to believe in the work that we can achieve together. You know, we're working together for our neighborhoods, and people resonated with that, and they're putting us back in office to continue the work that we've already been achieving.
While out there campaigning, what are some of the major issues you've been hearing about that you're going to kind of tackle when back in office?
I think the biggest issues are we're looking at quality of life in our neighborhoods, making sure our neighborhoods are paid attention to on Beacon Hill, making sure that we're bringing back funding that's going to build infrastructure to allow private enterprise to continue to grow in the district, or whether we're making sure that public safety and our needs in our schools are up to met by the state level, and making sure that we're working with all our partners on all the different levels, whether it's federal, state, or local level, making sure that we have a leader there that knows how to set the table and bring conversations together and deliver real results for the constituents.
Big celebration inside where Dan Donahue just thanked his supporters for sending him back to Beacon Hill to serve the 16th Worcester District. In the Canal District, Olivia Lemon, back to you in the studio.
Thank you, Olivia. The 16th district, one of several local races we are keeping an eye on tonight in central Massachusetts. And for a closer look at tonight's results, we send it over to Andy Lacombe with Charter TV3 political analyst Guy Glodis.
All right, with the former Worcester County Sheriff Guy Glodis. And Guy, let's start right away with the 16th Worcester District. John Frisella had served 15 plus years or so in this district, went away for a couple of years, came back to challenge Dan Donahue. Is it a surprise at the margin tonight? 67% for Donahue.
I'm not so sure, Andy. I don't think this election really lived up to the hype. There was a lot of media attention around this race, maybe more negative than positive. But people were really fixated with this race, thinking it was going to be a race. But really, from the ground level, Dan Donahue had a lot of support. I've always said you have to give the electorate reason to vote out an incumbent. And there was never a reason to vote out Dan Donahue. I mean, separate of John Frisella, Dan Donahue's always been very visible, very accessible. He's not hit any bumps along the road. He hasn't had any problems in Boston, the district. So it's very hard to unseat an incumbent. And, you know, I thought that race would be just about where it was, 60-40. Certainly it's tough when you run against the challenger that was the incumbent and puts a lot of people in a precarious situation, especially with endorsements. But Dan Donahue never lost the ground game, and he never gave the electorate a reason to vote against him.
So if it's not broke, don't fix it necessarily is the message here. In a district that you once represented. I did. Well. All right, let's go to the 17th Worcester District. This was a hotly contested House race. The incumbent, Kate Campanelli, re-elected tonight by about 1,400 votes. She won Leicester by 3,000 votes, and that margin held up over Moses Dixon, a challenger from Worcester. Brittany Schaefer just caught up with the winner tonight.
We're here in Leicester at Eller's Restaurant, where State Representative Kate Campanelli is joined by her supporters. Campanelli beat out Moses Dixon in a tight race here in the 17th Worcester District. She says she is excited to head back to the Boston State House for her second term. Kate, how do you feel tonight?
I feel terrific. It's good. It's been a lot of hard work over the past few months, but I think it just goes to show all of the work we've done over the past 2 years. And really happy to have run on my accomplishments and my record. And I think the voters ultimately saw that as well.
That is excellent. Now, what would you say was the biggest issue you heard from voters that you're going to focus on improving?
You know, I think it's all the work that I've started to do in these past 2 years, and really started looking forward to continuing that work for the people of the district.
And what do you think set you apart mainly from your opponent?
Well, I think it's that I had a record and an accomplishment, and I've proven myself over the past 2 years and have been very proud to represent this district.
And then lastly, what do you hope to accomplish over the next 2 years?
Oh gosh, we have a lot to accomplish in the next 2 years, but I think, again, we'll be focusing on statewide issues such as the budget, and always it comes back to the district and the local constituents.
Fantastic. Thank you, Representative, and congratulations. Now Campanelli tells us she did many door knocks more this year because of the higher voter turnout. In Leicester, I'm Brittany Schaefer. Andy, back to you.
All right, thanks, Brittany. So Kate Campanelli telling our Brittany Schaefer she had to knock a lot more doors because of the presidential election and all the attention that comes through with it. Turnout's obviously going to be higher this time around than 2 years ago. What did you see as a factor in this race between Dixon and Campbell?
You know, I got to tell you, that's an extremely interesting district because the majority of votes, almost 70% of that district's votes are in the city of Worcester. But historically, Leicester's a very proud community, and they always seem to support the hometown candidate. I remember back in the 1980s when Bob McNeil represented it, and he was from Leicester. And you saw that big bump that Kate Campanelli got, 3-1 coming out of Leicester. Those are hard numbers to make up, and I think she spent the bulk of her time working Worcester. She did a lot of doors in Worcester, and her strategy was always, let me just split Worcester, I'll be fine. That was a strategy at work. Leicester's a very supportive town of the pro-incumbent, especially when you come from Leicester, whether you're a Republican or Democrat. It's a tiny town. They want a representative from that town. She had unanimous support coming out of the community, which made it very difficult to beat her, and she should be congratulated on running a good campaign.
Big topic out of this one was her support for increasing penalties against people who commit crimes or violence against police officers, and that was something that came up in the debate. She won Leicester by more than 3,000 votes. Tough to make up for Moses Dixon.
Very, very tough. And again, her strategy was just hold her own in Worcester. She did that. She made a big issue out of a lot of the pro-police legislation, which is key. We had a police officer shot in Auburn. I think it resonated early and often with a lot of voters in and around the 17th Worcester District. So that was, again, no big surprise, but a good fight fought on both sides.
To another area of the state that you represented as a state senator, the 7th Worcester District. It's represented by Paul Frost, and he had a challenger this year in a Democrat and Terry Burke Dotson, and we are giving Paul Frost, the incumbent, another win tonight. He's spent a lot of time, 2 decades in the State House. He's going back, and our Rosalind Flaherty caught up with the Republican in Auburn tonight.
We're in Auburn tonight where Representative Paul Frost has gathered with supporters to celebrate an election night victory. He has been re-elected in the 7th Worcester District and will go back to Boston for his 11th term. We're now joined with Representative Paul Frost. Rep, congratulations.
Oh, thank you very much.
How do you feel about the amount of support you've seen in your district?
It feels great, really. I'm very humbled by it, that once again, by a pretty sizable margin, we'll be able to be re-elected as a state representative for this district and to go back and to serve the good people of it.
And what are some of the key issues in your district that you will first tackle back in office?
I think the first one we're going to tackle is our legislation that we filed this year as a result of the loss of Officer Tarantino, an act to protect police officers and law enforcement officers. And we're going to refile that again in January, and I think that's going to be the first priority. But always the priorities are there for local aid, trying to help out our local schools, trying to fix our local roads, and those are always challenges that are taking place that we have to work on. But I would say the police officer one is the biggest one right now.
And how do you think this election has been different from past years with so much attention on the presidential candidates?
I think it was a very polarizing year, and so many political emotions by people when it came to the top two candidates here for Trump and Clinton. And what happens in these kind of years is that down ballot races can be tough because you have to fight for attention to be recognized so people know what's happening, and because there are some people who only come out to vote once every 4 years, and they don't necessarily vote in between, and so you're trying to get their attention as well, that the races down ballot matter.
Representative Frost, thank you. That was Representative Paul Frost heading back to Boston for his 11th term. He has been in the seat now for 2 decades. Andy, back to you.
All right, thank you, Rosalind. All right, Guy, Paul Frost, no surprise there.
Absolutely. He's not the most charismatic candidate, but he always works. He's really not a show horse, but he's a workhorse. He never misses a vote. He's in the district. He's always visible, and sometimes the workhorse outpaces the show horse.
All right, so
that's the example.
He mentioned it, and others have mentioned it, the presidential race and how that's impacted local politics. But let's get to the presidential race, because you've been talking about the possibility of Donald Trump doing very well tonight, and at this hour, he is. That's a surprise to some, especially in the state of Massachusetts, but what's the difference?
It shouldn't be a surprise. I always said Donald Trump will do better than his poll numbers, but I think when you look at this race, no matter who wins and who loses, and we might not know until tomorrow, Andy, but 2 things come to mind. the media is going to have egg on their face. I mean, they've been saying since day one, there's about a 5% probability of Donald Trump winning. The electoral map favors Hillary. Hillary's got the momentum. I didn't see one consistent poll throughout the entire race the media talked about with him ahead. And now suddenly, all of a sudden, miraculously, he's ahead. But the more interesting note about this race has been the flip-flop of the constituencies of both parties. Donald Trump has really been propelled by the non-educated, not college-educated, poorer working class. Hillary Clinton has really been supported by the heavier, more educated, wealthier class. That's a complete dynamic shift. Usually the Republicans always have the wealthier, more educated constituent, and the Democrats always have the poorer, less educated, working class constituents. This race has flip-flopped itself. It's very, very interesting to see how those two constituencies have jumped ship from the norm of their party. So there's going to be big changes, I think, in both parties. We saw it 50 years ago when the South went from a heavily Democratic area to a Republican area. We're seeing it now with a shift in constituencies. The Republicans are picking up those old Reagan Democrats, the blue-collar, non-educated, that really make such a difference in close races. And you're seeing it again tonight where Trump is capitalizing on that.
He said some outlandish things in this campaign. She had the email leaks, of course. These are two not very popular candidates. There's a lot of fear on both sides. Can the country be unified by one of these two candidates?
Well, it's going to be very difficult. Whoever wins this election is going to be viewed as the most unpopular president-elect in the history of America, according to modern polling data. So that's going to be very difficult for the new president, whoever it is, whether it's her or him, to come in to a divided country, a divided Congress, and that's when their leadership is going to have to show right away. Whether it's Hillary or whether it's Donald Trump, they have to be able to unite Congress, unite the country, unite the people, and say, hey, there's a bigger issue here, and the president's got to represent everyone. Not just the people that help get them elected, but the entire country. And that's the first big step, is uniting a very divided country.
Guy Galotis, thank you very much. The Sam Adams of Worcester, you know, he's a barman and a patriot as well. Let's go to Andy Madison, where we have more people, and Republicans and Democrats, watching these national races tonight. Andy?
Thanks, Andy. That's right. The presidential race, as you mentioned, could come down to the wire between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. Here in New England, Hillary Clinton won Massachusetts and also Rhode Island and Vermont earlier tonight. Now, here in central Massachusetts, both local Republicans and Democrats got together to watch the results come in. Catherine Angioli joins us from one of those watch parties in Shrewsbury.
It's election night, and there's a big crowd here at Lakeside Bar and Grill in Shrewsbury. We're going to talk to Karen Polito and Hannah Kane about this year's election and all of the excitement leading up to tonight.
It's been a really long election season. I think partly what people are celebrating tonight is the end of the election season, and knowing that we understand who's going to be taking control of the country, how the ballot questions are going to turn out in Massachusetts, and then obviously there's a lot of local races that people are in tune to. So, you know, tonight is both sort of a celebration of the end of the cycle and also a beginning of a new, group of people who are coming in to be in control of our legislative direction.
After Charlie and I were elected 2 years ago, there were many people that didn't support us on election day, and we felt it was very important to go out soon after election and reach out to the people and to the communities that didn't support us, to get to know them and to do our job for them. And I think now, 2 years later, we have more of an opportunity to help more people in our Commonwealth. And I think this is an opportunity for the leadership in our country to do just that, to reach out to all the people of this country and unite and make our country even stronger than it already is.
And that was Lieutenant Governor Karen Polito and Hannah Kane at their event tonight at Lakeside Bar and Grill in Shrewsbury. Again, a lot of energy here tonight. Lots of people keeping a close eye on that television in Shrewsbury. Catherine Angioli, back to you in the studio.
All right, thank you, Catherine. And going back to the local races, and we move now to the 2 Senate seats up for grab. Looking at the 2nd Worcester District, incumbent Michael Moore going up against Mezvin Bashir. Senator Moore winning re-election. Here's what he had to say about the victory earlier tonight.
The economy, local aid. I know I will say a lot of the conversation really evolved around the question 4 and the question 2. I would be out places and people would say, hey, what's the real story behind these 2 questions? So I think people were paying attention to what was coming across the airwaves on how that was going to impact everyone.
All right, that was Senator Moore, and we are hearing from Ann Goby's campaign that they are leading by a substantial margin, but they are still waiting on votes from several towns. This is the second largest Senate district by area in the state. We will keep you updated on these results as